There is a stretch of mountain country in the eastern United States that locals do not mark with signs, borders, or warnings. They speak of it quietly, often only when asked directly, and always in the same steady tone. They call it the Appalachian Triangle, a region where trails do not behave the same way every day, where voices drift across empty ridges, and where time bends in small, measured ways. Nothing here announces itself. Nothing rises into fear or spectacle. Instead, the land shifts in its own rhythm, leaving behind calm reports written by rangers, hikers, and residents who have walked these slopes for generations. Each detail stands alone, yet together they form a pattern that does not fit cleanly on any map. This documentary explores that pattern, 12 chapters built from logs, journals, interviews, and quiet observations gathered across decades, offering a steady look at the place locals say you should never hike alone, the quiet corners of the triangle. The first thing locals mention when speaking about the Appalachian Triangle is not a single event, but a feeling that follows people long before anything unusual is seen. This region, positioned loosely between Norton in Virginia, Harlan in Kentucky, and the high ridge towns of eastern Tennessee, has gained its name not through official mapping, but through decades of soft warnings, repeated in the same calm tone. People say hikers walk into these woods with clear plans and return with altered stories, or do not return at all. The edges of the three-state line hold long stretches of forest, where paths turn without purpose, and sound travels in ways that do not match the landscape. Though many visitors speak of the trail system as familiar and safe, those who grew up nearby describe it with far more restraint. In September 1998, a ranger named Paul Whitlow from Lee County made a note in his field log about an early morning call from a search team. A hiker had reported hearing a voice repeating his name every few minutes near Stone Mountain, even though no one else was recorded on the trail that day. Whitlow wrote, "Caller was calm, said the voice sounded close but no direction matched it. There was no follow-up filed, but the entry remains part of the small stack of handwritten notes kept in a box at the county office. It marks one of the many incidents locals point to when explaining why they advise new hikers not to visit these woods alone. Older residents mention a case from June 1973, when a man named Eli Foster walked out of the woods near Big Cherry Lake after being missing for 2 days. Foster told the sheriff he had sat down on a ridge to rest, then woke to find the forest silent. He claimed the trees around him looked out of order, as if the entire slope had shifted while he slept. A search party had walked that same ridge the afternoon before and saw no sign of him. Sheriff Wayne Russo recorded in his report that Foster's clothing was dry, though heavy rain had fallen for hours during the night he had been missing. Foster could not explain this detail and avoided further questions by saying he wanted to go home. Another account, often spoken of quietly, involves a pair of brothers, Thomas and Avery Rudd, who entered the Little Black Mountain Trail system in 1984. Thomas returned at dusk, carrying both packs. Avery did not. When asked what happened, Thomas said he stopped to tie his bootlace and looked up to see the path bending sharply to the right, a direction he had never noticed before. Avery stepped toward it, saying something Thomas did not understand. The bend disappeared as soon as Thomas looked away, leaving only a straight path and no sign of his brother. Search teams combed the area for 9 days. They reported hearing soft knocking sounds in the hollow below, spaced evenly, like someone tapping wood. The source was never found. Locals describe these incidents in plain, steady voices. They do not raise alarms or offer theories. They speak as though they are describing changes in weather or the movement of deer herds. In Harlan County, a store owner named Ruthie Ma kept a notebook behind the counter where visitors could write comments about trail conditions. One entry from 2007, signed by a hiker named L.M., reads, "Met a man near mile marker 4, asked for the time, turned around and he was gone. No branches moved." Ma never removed the page and often pointed to it when travelers asked why the Appalachian Triangle was marked differently on some local maps. In a small church near Dryden, a pastor named Harold Fritz recorded a message in 1995 about members of his congregation who worked part-time with volunteer search teams. Fritz mentioned that most hikers found within the triangle show signs of confusion rather than injury. He described a man located on a flat clearing who believed he had descended 2,000 feet even though he had not left the ridge. Fritz ended the message by saying, These hills hold their own lines. Men try to follow them, but the land chooses the way. On the Tennessee side, an early ranger report from 1961 describes a group of university students who camped near the Powell Valley overlook. The ranger, identified only by the initials CP, wrote that the group complained of bright flashes behind the tree line at night. When patrols checked the area before sunrise, they found no fire marks or disturbed ground. The students left early, leaving their tents in place. CP wrote, "They refused to return for their gear, said the flashes were not light, but something that made the air feel thinner." The Appalachian Triangle has also collected a number of unofficial trail markers left by hikers who never became fully lost but felt uneasy enough to turn back. Small stacks of stones, bits of cloth tied to branches, and scratched arrows on old wooden posts have all appeared without record. Some of these markers were photographed by a volunteer named Dennis Kirk in 2014. One image from his collection shows a series of stones placed in a perfect circle around a rotting log. Kirk stated during a meeting in Pennington Gap that he had no idea who arranged them, and no one ever claimed responsibility. Local wildlife officers have also documented odd movements in the area. In 2003, Officer Janice Holloway tracked a black bear that wandered unusually close to residential land. She followed the bear's prints back toward the ridge, but noted that the trail stopped abruptly near a dry creek bed. She wrote in her seasonal summary, "Animal appeared healthy. No injury. Tracks end with no explanation." Holloway later told a regional reporter that the bear seemed startled whenever she approached, though it showed no signs of aggression. Strangely timed weather changes are mentioned often. Hikers describe sudden drops in temperature on clear afternoons, short bursts of wind that cannot be explained by nearby ridges, and pockets of silence strong enough to obscure normal forest noise. A forester named Donald Reeves spent part of his career studying these shifts. His report from 1,992 notes, an instance where a temperature monitor placed near High Knob recorded a 10-degree drop in less than 2 minutes on a cloudless morning. Reeves wrote that the shift did not follow known air patterns and could not be matched to nearby data. Interviews collected by historian May Sutton in 2008 also contribute to the quiet warnings that shape this region. She spoke with families who lived near the boundaries of the triangle for generations. Many said their parents gave simple instructions: stay with others, turn back if the woods feel too still, and never follow a voice that calls you by name. One interviewee, a retired miner named Clyde Hensley, told Sutton, "The hills talk sometimes. They don't mean harm. They just don't like people walking alone." These remarks, while gentle, form the framework of a larger hesitation shared by those who know the land well. The Appalachian Triangle, despite lacking official borders, has earned a reputation that rests not on fear, but on quiet awareness. Locals continue to speak with the same steady tone, offering the same advice they have passed down for decades. Their words remain simple: do not go alone. Shifts in the ridgelines. When people talk about trails changing inside the Appalachian Triangle, they do not describe dramatic movements. They refer instead to small adjustments that appear over time, the sort that only someone who walks the same route for years would notice. Many hikers see the forest as unchanging, but several park workers have kept steady notes showing how certain ridgelines do not hold the same shape from season to season. These records do not speak of landslides or storms. They point to minor bends in established paths, narrow cuts that appear where none existed, and sections where the ground feels level one day and slightly sloped the next. It is a pattern noted quietly, often with the same calm language used for weather reports. In the spring of 1989, Ranger Evelyn Morris was assigned to survey the boundary between Powell Mountain and Cliffside Ridge. She carried a simple field camera and a folder of hand-drawn maps dating back to 1971. Morris noticed that the turn leading to the upper ridge had shifted several feet to the east. She photographed the area and later marked the difference in her report. She wrote, "Trail appears the same, but its line on the slope is unfamiliar." She walked the same route 7 times that month and reported that the curve continued to drift little by little. Her supervisor approved the update, but did not provide an explanation. Further evidence appears in a 1996 maintenance log written by a crew leader named Walter Brinks. Brinks described a trail section near Sand Lick Mountain where wooden markers began to lean at an unusual angle. When his team tried to correct them, they found the soil beneath had compacted in a way that did not match recent weather. Brinks wrote, "Markers tilt back within days. No sign of animal or water interference." He recommended placing temporary flags to help hikers stay on the correct path. These flags were found scattered within a week. Several of them moved uphill rather than down. On the Kentucky side, a retired surveyor named Arthur Dean kept a personal journal of hikes he took between 1975 and 2002. Dean measured slopes and checked compass readings for his own interest. One entry from October 1981 mentions a spot on Stoneface Ridge where the compass needle drifted slightly to the west despite no magnetic interference noted in earlier hikes. Dean returned in 1985 and recorded a new shift in the opposite direction. He wrote, "Ridge appears familiar, but orientation does not hold steady." Dean's family donated his journals to the local museum in Harlan, where staff still reference them when discussing the triangle's quiet anomalies. Strange changes have also been noted in the way water moves across these ridges. A hydrologist named Peter Rowland studied runoff patterns throughout the 1,990 seconds. Rowland placed several shallow markers along a small stream near the Tennessee border. The water route changed 3 times in 4 years, even though rainfall totals remained steady. Rowland found the shifts gentle, as if the stream preferred different ground each season. He reported that the movement did not match erosion rates. When he asked locals about it, one farmer told him, "Those creeks don't stay where you leave them. We can." In June 2004, a volunteer named Selena Parr joined a mapping project to clarify trail systems for incoming hikers. Parr was experienced and familiar with along slope gradients. She walked part of the ridge near High Point Bluff and carried a handheld GPS device. She noted that her route formed a slight arc on the device, even though the ground under her feet appeared straight. Parr walked the segment again and found the same arc register a few feet to the south. She submitted the coordinates to the regional office. The discrepancy was filed, but never corrected. The Appalachian Trail Club in Virginia also holds a 1,979 record describing a temporary divergence of a footpath used by long-distance hikers. A group traveling north reported that the path veered away from a familiar oak tree that had served as a landmark for years. When volunteers checked the site a week later, the path moved back into alignment, leaving the group uncertain whether they misremembered the location. One hiker wrote, "The tree was behind us, though it felt like we had approached it head-on. No formal action was taken, but the report remains in the archive." A quiet pattern emerges in the testimonies of those who frequent these areas. They do not claim the land transforms dramatically. Instead, they speak of the ridgelines behaving in slow, subtle ways. When asked to describe the changes, a long-time resident named Hannah Jacobs explained, "The woods don't change fast. They shift like someone nudging a piece of furniture an inch at a time. You don't notice until something feels different." Seasonal crews who maintain the trails have recorded similar experiences. In 2011, a new ranger, John Tell, reported that the ridge near Little Stone Gap appeared narrower than it looked on existing maps. Tell walked the route with a senior ranger who agreed that the ridge felt different from when he last visited. Tell wrote in his update, "Width not incorrect, but memory does not match present layout. The office amended the map, but did not state why the change occurred." Another example appears in a 1987 note from botanist Carla Merton. She studied a cluster of mountain laurel shrubs near a shallow saddle. Merton observed that the shrubs shifted their growth pattern from east-facing to north-facing in a single decade, despite no major change in sunlight. She marked the observation as unusual but stable. Merton later told colleagues during a lecture, "The plants know something about the ridge, we do not." A minor yet persistent detail mentioned by many is the way footsteps sound different across certain sections. Some hikers say the forest floor produces a hollow tone near parts of the ridge, even though the soil depth appears normal. Others say the ground feels firmer than expected, as if reinforced. These sensory changes are rarely documented formally, but they appear in personal letters and notes. In 2009, a hiker named Chris Halden wrote to the Lee County office, saying, "The ridge sounded empty under me, like walking above a room." Taken together, these details create a record of ridgelines that do not remain static. They show paths that drift without clear cause, markers that tilt without known pressure, and slopes that hold two shapes at once depending on who walks them. The changes are small and quiet, but they persist in reports, journals, and field notes created decades apart. Those who work in these woods continue to mention them with the same neutral tone, offering no explanation. They describe these shifts the way they describe wind patterns or the fading of old trail paint, accepting them as part of the land. The disappearing voices. Accounts of voices drifting through the Appalachian Triangle are not spoken in urgent tones. They are described slowly, as if the people who heard them prefer to let the memories settle before giving them shape. The reports stretch back decades, appearing in ranger logs, personal letters, church journals, and handwritten entries passed down inside families. The voices are usually soft. They come from no precise direction. They stop the moment someone tries to follow them. Most hikers who mention the sounds describe them as familiar, though they cannot say why. These records are not linked to storms or wildlife. They fall into their own category, steady and unchanging. One of the earliest written accounts comes from August 1956, recorded by Ranger Louis Harlan. He responded to a call from two campers near Big Cherry Lake who reported hearing what sounded like a woman calling for help. Harlan walked their described path twice and heard nothing. His note reads, "Campers calm." Said voice used the same tone each time, no echo pattern. He checked nearby hollows and found no sign of activity. The campers left the area early, but did not request further investigation. Their names remain in the old ledger, written in Harlan's tight handwriting. A more detailed incident appears in a 1972 search report involving a hiker named Daniel Fry. Fry was last seen near Powell Mountain and was found 2 days later on a ridge several miles from his planned route. When asked what led him off the main path, he said he heard his brother calling his name. Fry's brother lived in Ohio and had not travelled south. Fry said the voice sounded exactly like him, repeating the name Dan in a calm tone. The search team leader, identified as Ranger J. Hill, recorded, "Subject believed call to be familiar." Followed sound into deeper woods. Voice stopped after first hour. Fry had no injuries and could not explain why he continued walking even after the sound faded. In June 1985, a group of volunteer firefighters from Harlan County were performing a training hike near the Kentucky border when they heard what they described as a single word spoken from above the tree line. Two members claimed the word was "go," while the third said it resembled his own name. The group searched the slope, believing someone may have fallen, but found the forest silent. Their chief filed a brief note. Voices present for under 20 seconds. No repeat, no wind direction indicator. The team returned to their station without incident. Another account comes from a teacher named Ellen Marks, who visited the region in 1993. Marks walked part of the High Knob Trail with her dog and later wrote a letter to the local visitor's office. She described a moment when the forest became unusually still, causing her dog to stop and stand alert. Marks said she then heard a whisper that sounded like her own voice, though she could not understand the words. She remained in place until the dog began to walk again. Marks wrote, "Sound felt close, but did not travel through air. Not frightening, not natural." The letter remains in the office archive, folded inside a folder marked Trail Observations. Comments from search teams also highlight the strange role of these voices during missing person investigations. In many cases, the sounds influence the direction teams choose to follow. In 2001, during a search for a man named Peter Lang, several volunteers reported hearing faint speech coming from a narrow ravine. When they reached the area, they found no tracks, no broken branches, and no sign of recent human passage. The team noted that the sound did not resemble normal echo behavior. One volunteer wrote, "It seemed placed rather than carried." 2 years later, Ranger Lydia Moss responded to a call about hikers who claimed to hear a child crying near Cliffside Ridge. Moss logged the event, stating that the hikers believed the sound was moving along the slope rather than staying in one place. Moss checked the ridge with a second ranger. They heard nothing. She closed her report with a line repeated in several other logs from the region. Sound reported, source not identified, no anomaly located. The voices are not always linked to distress. A handful of reports describe friendly greetings spoken in quiet tones. In 2007, a hiker named Marvin Ellis told a ranger that he heard someone say, "Morning, friend," while walking alone near a narrow pass. He turned to respond, but saw no one. Ellis wrote his own brief account, saying the voice sounded conversational, as if someone stood only a few steps away. Ellis returned to the same area months later and heard nothing. A small number of logs mention voices repeating a hiker's name. These entries, though rare, appear consistent in their descriptions. In 2010, a woman named Rachel Green reported hearing her name spoken 3 times as she approached a junction near Stone Ridge Cut. She said the voice matched the tone of her father, who had passed away years earlier. Green told the responding ranger that she did not feel fear, but noticed the forest becoming quiet in sections, loud in others. Her account was written down without additional comment. Researchers who study natural sound patterns have examined some of these claims. In 2014, an acoustic technician named Dr. Frank Lowe visited the area to place small audio monitors along parts of the ridge. Lowe recorded several nights of forest noise, but found nothing unusual. He said, "Voice reports do not align with known echo chambers or temperature inversions." Lowe concluded that local geography could not fully explain the accounts. Despite the repetition of these stories, the people who share them speak with steadiness. They do not describe the voices as threatening or dangerous. They speak of them as part of the landscape, the same way someone might mention a low mist forming at dusk. Their tone is not dramatic, it is simply observant. A postmaster in Lee County, who has lived near the Triangle for over 30 years, once remarked, "Those voices don't chase people, they call in ways we don't understand." People who live near the boundaries say the voices become more common during late summer or after long spells of dry weather. Some hunters believe the sounds move with temperature shifts along the ridges. Others say the voices come from hollows where sound carries strangely, even when the forest is still. None of these explanations appear in formal documentation. They remain spoken traditions, carried forward by generations who walk the woods with quiet awareness. These accounts continue to accumulate in logs and journals. They remain steady in tone, matching the land that holds them. Whether the voices come from wind patterns, broken echoes, or something less understood, they form part of the region's identity. Hikers who enter the Appalachian Triangle often hear the same advice from locals. If a voice calls your name, do not answer. Keep walking. Stay on the path. The silent clearings. Across the Appalachian Triangle, there are pockets of forest where sound seems to fall away in a manner that does not match the surrounding terrain. These spaces are not large. They appear as small openings, sometimes only a few steps across, sometimes wide enough for a cluster of young trees. People who enter them describe a noticeable change in the air. Their words settle into the same steady pattern. Footsteps become muted, branches do not rustle, and distant birdsong fades as if it has been moved to another part of the ridge. These clearings do not appear on maps, yet they are marked in dozens of field notes, journals, and ranger reports that span more than half a century. One of the earliest written descriptions comes from 1959, recorded by forester Alan Rudd. Rudd noted a clearing near the Kentucky line where sound did not travel. He wrote, "Felt like standing behind thick glass." Rudd clapped his hands and stated that the echo response was delayed by nearly a second, softer than expected for a space surrounded by dense timber. He returned twice, measuring air temperature and humidity. They matched surrounding areas. Rudd did not push further. He wrote the words "unusual zone" on the edge of the map and moved on. In 1977, 2 hikers from Tennessee, Ann and William Carter, reported passing through a clearing near High Knob where wind noise stopped abruptly. Ann described it as walking from open forest into a sealed room. William said the space lasted no more than 20 paces before normal forest sound returned. They notified a ranger out of caution. The ranger, identified only as A, walked to the described location later that week. He wrote in his log, "Sound dip present. No evidence of wind break or topographic cause." He noted that the clearing was framed by small dogwood trees, all leaning slightly inward. Another account appears in an interview collected by historian May Sutton in 2008. Sutton spoke with a retired miner named Gerald Oakes, who recalled a clearing south of Black Mountain where miners sometimes walked during shift changes. Oakes said the men referred to the space as the quiet pad. He described a place where conversation dropped to a low murmur, no matter how loudly someone spoke. Oakes said, "We didn't stay in it long, not dangerous, just too still. Sutton included his recollection in a section of her notes titled Local Observations, Not Folklore. Field technicians also noticed these pockets. In 1994, a research intern named Carla Simmons conducted a wildlife survey along the Virginia side of the triangle. One of her checklist sheets includes the note 5-minute pause in sound. She marked a location near a shallow saddle and wrote that she could not hear insects, birds, or the regular drip of moisture she recorded moments earlier. Simmons later told her supervisor that she felt disoriented stepping out of the clearing, as if the forest regained its sound all at once, rather than gradually. Another striking report comes from 2003, when a maintenance crew repairing erosion control structures near Cliffside Ridge entered a clearing that silenced their equipment noise. Crew leader Martin Hale wrote, "Tamping plates made almost no sound when placed on ground." He also noticed that the usual metallic echo from tools did not carry beyond a few feet. Hale had worked in the region for over 20 years and wrote plainly, "Area not previously like this," Change noted. Several hikers claim that when they enter these clearings, they feel as if the air becomes slightly heavier, though temperature readings do not reflect that sensation. In 2010, a hiker named Sarah Mitchell told a volunteer ranger that the clearing she passed through felt dense, though her thermometer showed the same reading as the nearby ridge. She described the space as holding its own quiet, separate from the surrounding forest. A documented example from 2014 involves a field test run by environmental technician Henry Pike. Pike placed 3 small audio sensors across a ridge to study sound propagation. 2 of them worked normally. The third, placed inside a clearing he did not initially recognize as unusual, recorded nothing for a continuous 8-hour period. Pike checked the device, found it functional, and moved it 10 yards outside the clearing. The sensor picked up forest noise immediately. Pike wrote, "Equipment behaved as if muted when in that space." Certain clearings have also been connected to search efforts. In 1999, during the search for a missing hiker named Brian Mercer, several volunteers noted that radio communication dropped intermittently when passing through a small opening on the slope north of Little Black Mountain. Radios regained full function moments after leaving the space. Team leader Dana Wyatt described the effect as a short curtain of silence. Wyatt drew a circle on her map, but did not include the clearing in her final report, saying, "It did not affect search direction." Not all encounters with these clearings involve strong reactions. Some hikers pass through them without noticing anything unusual. Others mention them only in small comments on feedback forms. One form from 2006 states simply, "Entered quiet patch, no bird noise, lasted 10 seconds. This brief remark appears between notes about trail markers and the condition of wooden footbridges. Weather researchers occasionally examine these spaces. In 2017, meteorologist James Keller conducted an informal study of microclimates in the region. Keller noted one clearing where airflow measured almost 0, despite nearby wind patterns showing steady movement. He wrote, "Dead air pocket present. Duration stable for full observation window." Keller could not explain why the clearing resisted airflow while nearby areas followed predictable patterns. Locals sometimes use these clearings as reference points when giving directions. A farmer named Harold Downs told a visitor in 2012, "If you walk past the place where the woods go quiet, you've gone too far." Downs did not elaborate. People native to the area speak in this way, treating the clearings as ordinary landmarks rather than anomalies. Photographs taken in these spaces show nothing out of place. Trees appear normal. Light enters without distortion. Soil composition matches surrounding areas. Yet the reports remain steady, describing the same feature again and again, sound dimming to a level not supported by the open terrain. The accounts have not changed over time. They continue to appear in logs, letters, and interviews with the same calm, measured language. Even now, these silent clearings do not have official names or explanations. They sit quietly along ridges, slopes, and forest paths, unnoticed by some, unmistakable to others. Those who document them do so without urgency. They walk in, listen, make notes, and move on. The land holds the silence without effort. The strangely timed weather. Weather in the Appalachian Triangle does not always follow the patterns expected of this region. Instead of large storms or dramatic shifts, the changes tend to arrive in small, precise moments that catch the attention of those who move through the woods regularly. Hikers, rangers, and researchers describe sudden drops in temperature that do not match nearby forecasts, thin gusts of wind that appear without clouds, and narrow bands of fog that settle only along certain ridgelines. These details appear in logs as early as the 1,940 seconds and continue without interruption into recent years. They are not listed as hazards. They are simply noted as observations that do not line up with the rest of the mountain environment. One of the earliest documented weather irregularities comes from a 1947 forestry report by Supervisor Ernest Dole. Dole wrote that the air temperature near Cliffside Ridge fell nearly 15 degrees in less than 3 minutes while the sky remained clear. He described the shift as a short, cold breath moving up from the ground. The temperature returned to normal after 10 minutes. Dole visited the site again the next day and measured nothing unusual. His report marked the event as an isolated deviation, but later entries from other workers would echo the same pattern. A more detailed set of notes appears in the 1964 Field Journal of Ranger Thomas Avery. Avery tracked wind movement across the slopes of Black Mountain for several weeks. On May 19 of that year, he wrote that a thin line of wind travelled across the ridge at waist height, strong enough to rustle shrubs, but not powerful enough to disturb tree branches. He described the wind as cleanly cut, as if it followed an unseen boundary. Avery placed stakes with ribbons along the ground to monitor the airflow. When he returned the next morning, the ribbons were still, yet he felt the same narrow drift of air move past his legs. Avery closed the entry by writing, "Wind runs along a band, not up, not down, not outward." Small storms that lack proper formation also appear in multiple accounts. In 1978, hikers Raymond and Linda Watkins described a short burst of rain that lasted less than 30 seconds while hiking near Little Stone Gap. The sky above them remained blue. The rain fell in a narrow circle, wetting only the immediate ground around them. When they stepped out of the patch, the air was dry. A ranger later walked to the same location and observed no signs of storm residue on surrounding leaves. His note simply states, "Localized rainfall too small to measure." Temperature shifts are the most commonly recorded anomaly. One particularly clear example comes from a 1988 study by climatologist Hannah Lowe, who visited the region to collect data on mountain microclimates. Lowe placed sensors along a slope near High Knob and checked them every few hours. On September 14, at 3:12 p.m, the device on the upper ridge recorded a sudden 9-degree drop, while the device 50 yards below registered no change at all. Lowe wrote, "Gradient inversion unexplained, no cloud cover change, no shadow interference." She repeated the test for 3 days, but the effect did not reappear. Lowe submitted her findings to her department, which labelled the anomaly as unlikely to replicate. Another incident, noted in a 1993 Ranger advisory form, involved a pocket of warm air rising from the ground in late October. Ranger Paul Evers stood on a dry clearing when he felt heat move upward in a slow, steady line along the centre of his legs. The temperature that day was 42 degrees. Evers measured the ground with a portable thermometer, but the soil was cold. His notes indicate that the warm current lasted 10 seconds and disappeared just as gradually. Evers wrote, "Warm ridge lift with no source. Surface inconsistent." Local residents have their own stories about these shifts, though they speak of them in plain, practical terms. A farmer named Reed Johnson, from the Virginia side of the Triangle, recalled a ridge where fog rolled in over 2 generations of family hikes. Johnson said the fog never arrived with storms. It simply appeared at the same curve of the trail whenever humidity passed a certain point. He said, "It sits on the ground like it's waiting, doesn't move uphill or down, just stays until it decides to open back up." His father and grandfather reportedly mentioned the same fog in old trail conversations. Localized wind events show up in several search logs as well. During a 2002 operation to locate a missing hiker, volunteers noted that a sudden gust pushed through a ravine on an otherwise still evening. The gust moved from east to west, even though surrounding weather instruments recorded wind from the south. Team leader Dana Wyatt described the event as a single push of air, one direction only, Radios experienced a brief static interruption during the gust, but functioned normally afterward. Wyatt added that the surrounding trees did not sway, even though brush near her feet did. Another search report from 2007 features a detail that caught attention not for its severity, but for its timing. A group of volunteers searching near Powell Mountain encountered a small patch of snow on an early April afternoon. The day was warm, and no nearby peaks held lingering snow. The volunteers described the patch as fresh and powder-like, not old or compacted. It melted within minutes as they examined it. A ranger visiting the location later found no trace of the snow. His only remark was, "short-lived frozen precipitation not supported by conditions." Interviews conducted by park historian May Sutton included several mentions of sudden, quiet wind shifts. One interviewee, a former trail runner named Aaron Fenn, said he often encountered warm wind that moved opposite the direction of his own movement. Fenn said, "It felt like running into someone's breath." He noted that the wind stopped the moment he paused. He made this observation 3 times within a single summer before choosing different routes. Scientific explanations offered over the years remain limited. Atmospheric researchers point to temperature inversions, channeling winds, and the natural behavior of mountain fog. Yet many of the recorded events do not match these patterns. The changes arrive too suddenly, remain too localized, and disappear too quickly. They also appear in the same small groups of ridges, suggesting a geographic consistency that does not align with typical weather variation. A ranger from the Tennessee side, who preferred not to include his name in reports, once said that the triangle makes its own weather in pieces. His remark reflected the tone of many locals who observe the land closely. They do not treat these shifts as warnings. They describe them instead as familiar movements that belong only to this region. A store owner in Lee County mentioned that hikers often return mentioning brief pockets of cold or bursts of wind. She said, "They ask if it's normal, and I tell them yes, it's normal for here." Recent field data collected by environmental technician Mira Calhoun in 2020 shows the same small irregularities. Calhoun placed humidity sensors along a descent toward the border of Harlan County. At 2:41 p.m., the lowest sensor spiked to full saturation for 1 minute, while the sensors above recorded no change. Calhoun repeated the test, but the spike did not return. She noted, "Localized moisture bloom without fog or rain, no dew formation." These weather anomalies do not form patterns strong enough to trigger official alerts or closures. They remain small details, quiet deviations observed by those who walk the triangle with steady attention. They continue to appear in logs, letters, and measurements separated by decades. The land alters its temperature, wind, and moisture in ways that do not align with the broader climate, yet the shifts are treated as another feature of the hills noticed, recorded, and left as they are. The unsettling footprints. Footprints found in the Appalachian Triangle have been noted quietly for decades. They do not form dramatic trails, nor do they resemble urgent signs of pursuit or flight. Instead, they appear as short sequences, measured carefully by rangers and volunteers, then recorded without speculation. Many prints belong to animals, common to the area: black bears, elk, bobcats, and deer, but a portion of the reports describe impressions that do not match these species the way they should. Some tracks are spaced too widely for an ordinary stride. Others begin with clarity and end abruptly in open ground. These details fill small sections of search logs from the 1,950 seconds onward, always written in the same steady tone used for weather changes or shifting ridgelines. One of the earliest unusual impressions was recorded in May 1953 by Ranger Leon Parker near Stone Ridge Cut. Parker found a set of prints he described as long, shallow depressions with an even spacing of nearly 4 feet. No claw marks appeared. The outline held no defining features. Parker followed the line for 20 yards before it stopped on bare soil. He wrote, "Track ends in open patch. No break in stride detected." Parker photographed the impressions with an old field camera, but the images show only faint shadows where the soil shifted. His report concluded that the tracks belonged to an unidentified walker, though he did not label them as human or animal. In 1969, a hunter named Samuel Boone reported a series of footprints near Powell Mountain that puzzled both him and the responding ranger. Boone described the prints as human-like but narrow, with the heel forming an unusually sharp point. The stride length measured 33 inches. Ranger Henry Wills visited the site the next day and noted the same details. Wills wrote, "Tracks do not match adult male or female dimensions. Narrow shape unlikely. The prints ended at a drop-off marked by a cluster of laurel shrubs. No sign of sliding, crawling, or climbing appeared in the soil beneath them." Reports from the 1,970 seconds include several mentions of tracks that travel uphill in straight, uninterrupted lines. One example comes from a 1,977 search log. A volunteer team looking for a lost hiker found a line of impressions moving up a steep slope at a constant angle. The spacing between steps did not shorten, even on the incline. Team leader Harold Pike wrote, "Footfalls do not match known climbing patterns. When the prints reached a narrow saddle, they vanished entirely, as if the walker stepped onto firm stone, though the ground on the opposite side was soft and should have captured at least one more mark." Pike included a simple hand-drawn sketch of the track line and left the matter without further comment. Another case appears in a 1982 forestry report by technician Carol Naves. While conducting a vegetation study near Little Black Mountain, Naves discovered 3 large tracks pressed into damp earth. She estimated each print at nearly 8 inches across, though the shape was irregular. She wrote, "Not bear, not elk, edges too defined for sliding." Naves followed the impressions for several steps until they reached an area of dense root cover. The trail did not continue. She wrote only, "Ground rises, prints do not." Small, unusual patterns appear as well. In 1989, hikers Christopher and Amy Cole found a cluster of prints arranged in a half circle, each one shaped like a shallow cup. They informed a ranger at the nearest station. Ranger Don Avery inspected the site and observed that the soil inside each print remained undisturbed, as if weight had not been applied through the center. Avery noted, "Impressions appear pressed from the sides, not from above." He marked the area on a map, but did not assign a cause. Search operations often reveal the strangest sequences. During the search for a missing teenager in 1995, a volunteer team found 2 footprints, both right foot impressions placed 12 feet apart. The depth of the prints suggested significant force, but the soil between them was untouched. Team member Linda Mercer wrote, "Stride does not match human or animal. No debris displaced." The search eventually moved away from the area, and the prints were left uninvestigated. One recurring detail in several reports concerns prints that appear after rain, yet show no signs of water pooling inside them. In 2001, Ranger Kyle Danner found a line of small, crisp impressions along a slope after a steady rainfall. The soil around the tracks was slick and reflective, but the prints remained dry. Danner removed a small sample of soil from inside the deepest mark and found its moisture content lower than the surrounding ground. He wrote, "Tracks resisted saturation, uncertain mechanism." Some hunters mention trails that do not behave like normal animal paths. A retired trapper named Bill Mason told park historian May Sutton in 2007 that he once followed a set of prints he thought belonged to a bobcat. The stride and spacing matched, but the toes pointed inward at a sharp angle. Mason said the prints led him toward a clearing, then stopped in a perfect line at its edge. He said, "Looked like the animal stepped out of the world." Sutton wrote his quote, "without interpretation." Another cluster of reports concerns footprints that overlap in ways that defy expected movement. In 2010, 2 hikers found several impressions at the base of a ridge that seemed to cross over each other without disturbing the soil. Ranger Marla Jensen inspected the site and wrote, "Intersections clean, no layering visible." She noted that dry leaves remained intact, even where multiple prints converged. Jensen submitted the observation as part of her annual summary under Unusual Ground Marks. Recent years show the same quiet patterns. Volunteers in 2018 found a set of deep impressions arranged in a straight line across a slope of loose shale. The shale should have shifted under even moderate weight, yet the edges of the prints stayed neat. Environmental technician Mira Calhoun visited the area and wrote, "Pressure applied without displacement. Ground response inconsistent." Locals explain these footprints with the same calm restraint they use for sudden temperature drops or disappearing voices. A farmer from the Virginia border, when asked about the odd tracks, said, "The hills get visitors of their own." He offered no further detail. Another resident remarked, "Some things walk through here that don't follow our weight." In every instance, the footprints remain unlinked to accidents or missing persons cases in any official capacity. They sit in logs as observations, not warnings. Each note captures the same steady awareness. Something passed through the triangle, leaving marks that do not fit expected patterns. Rangers record them carefully, then continue their work, moving along the trail as the land settles back into its quiet shape. The abandoned campsites. Campsites found empty inside the Appalachian Triangle have become one of the most carefully documented patterns in ranger logs. They do not resemble the aftermath of storms or hurried evacuations. Instead, they hold a strange calm, as if the people who occupied them stepped away with the intention to return, only to vanish without continuing any of the tasks they started. Rangers often describe these sites with the same quiet tone used for silent clearings or shifting ridgelines. They appear complete, intact, and undisturbed except for the missing people who tended them moments before. One of the earliest noted cases appears in a 1958 Ranger entry from Supervisor Henry Locke. Locke inspected a campsite near the border of Virginia and Kentucky after reports of smoke from the ridge. He found a small fire ring built with precision, the flames recently extinguished with water. A pan sat nearby, with beans warming inside, half stirred. A metal cup rested beside a tree, still warm to the touch. Locke waited an hour before exploring the surrounding area. He found no tracks leading away from the clearing, no signs of struggle, and no indication of wildlife interference. He wrote, "Camp prepared for one. No departure signaled. Food fresh." A second case, from May 1966, involved a pair of college students who were scheduled to return to Norton after a 3-day weekend. When they failed to arrive, a ranger team located their site near High Knob. The tent remained open, with sleeping bags unrolled. A map lay flat on a log, weighted by a pocket knife. Both backpacks leaned against a tree, fully zipped and untouched by animals. A kettle sat on a rock, water inside, still warm but not boiling. Ranger Paul Whitlow wrote, "Scene indicates brief step away, no disturbance. No departure path. The students were found the next afternoon several miles downslope, sitting calmly near a stream with no memory of leaving their camp." More examples surface in the 1970 seconds. A 1973 log describes a campsite used by a man named Elliot Price. Price had signed into the trail registry but failed to sign out. When rangers checked his expected overnight spot, they found his tent open, boots arranged neatly beside the flap, and jacket draped across a fallen branch. A pot of water hung over a dead fire, soot still warm. Inside the tent lay a book on early Appalachian surveys, open to a chapter on land boundaries. Price reappeared 3 days later 5 miles away, barefoot, unharmed, and unclear about how he travelled that distance. He told the ranger, "I stepped out for a moment, thought I saw someone I knew." No one matched his description. In 1981, a search team responding to a missing hiker report discovered a campsite that became one of the most referenced examples of sudden abandonment. The site lay near Little Black Mountain and belonged to a man named Patrick Lane. Lane's tent remained closed but unlatched. His food bag hung properly from a tree, untouched by animals. A camera sat on a stump, lens cap removed, as if Lane planned to take a photograph. Inside the tent, his journal displayed a half-written sentence. "The ridge feels." The sentence stopped there. Rangers found no signs of a fall, no broken branches, no missteps. Lane was discovered later that week on a road outside Harlan, confused but uninjured. Another type of abandoned campsite began appearing in the 1990 seconds. These were not associated with disappearances, but with hikers who returned later reporting memory gaps. One example comes from 1994, when 2 men camping near Powell Mountain stepped away from their site for what they believed was 20 minutes. They returned to find their fire reduced to ash and their lantern burned out, even though both had been recently lit. The men reported feeling out of step with the time. Ranger Sheila Moss inspected their site and confirmed no wildlife disturbance or weather pattern that could explain the sudden change. A similar account, from 1997, involved a father and son camping near a narrow hollow. The father said he woke shortly before dawn to a complete absence of sound. Their fire had extinguished itself, though the coals had not been smothered. A pot of oatmeal sat undisturbed, yet the surface had cooled as if left alone far longer than the few minutes the father believed had passed. He wrote on a feedback form, "Something paused the camp." His wording matched phrases seen in earlier logs, though he had no knowledge of them. One of the clearest modern examples occurred in 2006. A group of hikers found an empty campsite containing 3 chairs arranged around a fire pit. A pot hung over a bed of coals that still released thin trails of heat. Personal items, water bottles, jackets, a GPS device lay where someone would naturally leave them during a meal break. The hikers waited for half an hour before notifying rangers, assuming the campers had stepped out briefly. When rangers arrived, they found no identifying information. The fire pit showed signs of careful construction. The campsite looked neither abandoned nor rushed. Rangers conducted a sweep of the area and found no one. The site was dismantled the next day. Environmental technician Mira Calhoun investigated a campsite anomaly in 2018. A pair of hikers reported returning to their camp after a short walk to find their tent unzipped, though they had closed it. Nothing inside was disturbed. Their walking sticks, originally leaning against a tree, now lay parallel to each other on the ground. Calhoun examined the soil and noted no animal prints. She wrote, "Minor repositioning with no disturbance. Pattern suggests deliberate placement." She did not include speculation. Locals described these abandoned campsites with quiet certainty. Many mentioned finding meals half prepared as the clearest sign of sudden departure. "People don't leave food unless they think they'll be right back," a resident from Dryden once said. Another remarked, "The land calls folks away sometimes. They forget the rest for a moment." These explanations mirror the tone of ranger entries, steady, neutral, without urgency. Some residents also note that these campsites often appear near ridgelines, known for silent clearings or strange temperature shifts, though no official connection has ever been made. Hunters who frequent the area say abandoned sites rarely show signs of panic. They describe them as paused scenes, left in a condition that suggests a task interrupted rather than abandoned. In all these cases, the campsites share the same features: tools arranged neatly, fires tended properly, food in mid-preparation, and personal belongings untouched. The people associated with them often reappear elsewhere, confused about how much time has passed or uncertain about why they left. In other cases, the owners of the campsites remain unidentified, their temporary homes discovered by passing hikers who inform rangers out of caution. These abandoned campsites, like many other patterns in the Appalachian Triangle, do not point toward danger in any official sense. They stand instead as quiet markers of interruption, captured in logs that maintain a calm and factual tone. Rangers record them carefully, noting each detail exactly as found, and then they continue their work, leaving the sites just as the forest left them, still, orderly, and without explanation. The lost hours. Across the Appalachian Triangle, one of the quietest yet most persistent patterns involves hikers who lose track of time in ways they cannot explain. These accounts do not resemble fainting spells or exhaustion. They appear instead as calm descriptions of missing hours periods, during which the hikers continued walking, resting, or observing the forest without realizing that time had moved differently for them than for the world around them. Rangers who interview these hikers often note that they seem steady, alert, and puzzled rather than distressed. Their statements appear in logs stretching back more than 60 years, always written in the same measured tone. One of the earliest documented cases occurred in 1961, recorded by Ranger Charles Eaton. A man named Joseph Hale reported that he left his campsite at dawn to gather water from a nearby stream. He believed the walk took 10 minutes. When he returned, the sun sat higher in the sky. Hale's watch read 9:43 a.m. Eaton checked the man's supplies, his clothing, and the ground near the stream. Nothing suggested a longer journey. Hale repeated his estimate several times and said, "It felt like no more than a short walk." Eaton wrote simply, "Subject missing 3 hours by watch. No disturbance." Another example appears in a 1974 log involving a teacher named Margaret Rhodes. Rhodes described hiking a ridge near High Knob during a school break. She sat down near a cluster of young birch trees to eat lunch and watch the valley below. She recalled hearing a soft sound moving through the branches, then nothing else unusual. When she stood to continue her hike, she noticed shadows stretching farther across the trail. Her watch read 5:12 p.m., though she believed only 30 minutes had passed. Rhodes walked to a ranger station before dusk. Ranger Paul Whitlow recorded her statement and added, "No signs of dizziness, meal intact, water untouched." Rhodes remained clear-headed and drove home without assistance. In 1985, 2 college students reported a missing block of time while walking the Powell Mountain Loop. They believed they had completed the 6-mile segment in 2 hours, but their car's clock indicated they had been gone for nearly 5. Both students agreed that the trail felt shorter than usual. One stated, "It felt like the forest didn't take long today." Rangers inspected their route and found no detours or slow sections. In the official record, Ranger Harold Pike wrote, "Perceived duration inconsistent with recorded duration." A particularly detailed account came from 1991 when a wildlife photographer named Daniel Sutter visited the Triangle to study elk. Sutter left his base camp at 3 p.m. carrying a camera, tripod, and minimal gear. He recalled following a narrow game trail, stopping twice to adjust his lens. The forest felt unusually still, though he did not feel uneasy. When he reached a familiar overlook, he saw the sky darkening in a way that did not match his expectations. Sutter checked his watch and saw the time, 7:42 p.m. He had no memory of walking for nearly 5 hours. His camera held only 3 photos, matching the few moments he remembered. Ranger Sheila Moss interviewed him and noted, "Subject confident in recollection, no sign of injury. No fatigue beyond normal." Sutter later wrote in his personal notes that the trail felt shortened and lengthened at the same time. A smaller but telling pattern exists among hunters who frequent the Triangle. In 2002, a hunter named Gerald Knox described losing an hour while tracking deer near a narrow hollow. He believed he had followed a set of prints for 15 minutes before realizing the sun had shifted significantly. His watch matched the new position of the sun. Knox said, "Nothing happened. I was just walking." He returned home early and reported the event to a local warden the next day. The warden entered the note as "time discrepancy, 1 hour." One of the most referenced examples comes from a 2007 search for a missing woman named Lisa Norton. Search teams located Norton sitting on a log near a gentle bend in the trail. She appeared unharmed and alert. When asked how long she had been resting, Norton replied, "Just a few minutes." Her phone, however, showed that she had been stationary for almost 4 hours. Rangers confirmed she had sent a text message at 11:04 a.m. and was last seen by another hiker at 11:20. They found her at 3:03 p. Norton expressed genuine confusion. Ranger Marla Jensen wrote, "Subject consistent in belief of short duration, no memory gaps beyond normal activity." In 2013, a family hiking near the Tennessee border reported that their young son walked ahead on a straight section of trail. He disappeared around a gentle curve. The parents called out to him immediately and reached the same spot within seconds. They found him standing still beside the trail, calm and unharmed. The parents believed he had been out of sight for less than half a minute. Their phones indicated that nearly 12 minutes had passed between their first call and their reunion. Ranger Fiona Crowell interviewed the family. Her note reads, "Parents disbelieving of recorded time. Child unaffected." Environmental technician Mira Calhoun documented a time discrepancy of her own in 2019. Calhoun placed 5 soil sensors along a ridge to compare moisture levels. She walked between them in what she believed was a 15-minute interval. When reviewing the sensor timestamps, she discovered that 41 minutes had passed between 2 readings. Calhoun did not include the detail in her primary report, but she noted it privately as personal anomaly, no physical explanation. A consistent detail across these accounts is the calm tone of the people who experience the missing hours. They do not describe panic or confusion during the time itself. They describe simply continuing their hike, following a trail, or resting in familiar terrain. The missing hours become evident only when they check watches, phones, shadows, or the position of the sun. Rangers note that subjects often show normal hydration, normal fatigue levels, and no signs of injury. Locals speak of these lost hours in simple terms. A store owner in Harlan once told a visitor, "The woods don't run on your time." Another explained, "Some spots stretch a day, some fold it." These remarks are not given with drama or superstition. They are spoken as casual observations, shaped by decades of walking the same ridges. Researchers have offered explanations, such as momentary disorientation, altered perception, or the natural tendency to underestimate duration. Yet many of the recorded cases involve people with strong outdoor experience: hunters, photographers, teachers, and rangers themselves. The missing hours remain a quiet pattern hovering beneath the larger stories of abandoned camps, silent clearings, and changes in the land. In every log entry, the tone remains the same. A time gap is noted, measured, and left open. It becomes one more detail written into the long record of the Appalachian Triangle, steady, factual, and without conclusion. The repeating pathways. Reports of hikers walking the same stretch of trail more than once, despite moving in a single direction, appear quietly throughout the Appalachian Triangle's history. These accounts do not describe spiraling panic or disorientation. Instead, they portray steady movement interrupted by recognition moments when hikers notice a fallen log, an angled boulder, or a distinctive tree they had already passed earlier in the day. Rangers who document these incidents treat them as they do other anomalies in this region, with a calm tone, exact times, and simple descriptions uncolored by speculation. The repeating pathways make no demands. They present themselves as patterns that hikers step into without noticing, and step out of only when something shifts in the land around them. One of the earliest written mentions comes from 1954, when Ranger John Merrill logged a brief report from a hiker named Thomas Ray. Ray said he had followed a straight section of trail between two ridges on the Virginia side. After an hour, he reached a stump marked with a blaze, shaped like a crooked V. He later saw the same stump again, though he had not turned back or taken any side paths. Merrill walked the trail himself and noted, "Single path, no branch off, marker present in one location only." He recorded the event as trail repetition observed. More precise documentation appears in a 1968 note by Ranger Evelyn Morris. Morris interviewed a fisherman who had walked a half-mile path leading to a small stream near Black Mountain. He recognized an unusual cluster of mushrooms growing in a ring beside the trail. After reaching the stream and beginning his return, he saw the same cluster arranged in the same pattern, though he believed he had not retraced his steps. Morris wrote, "Subject certain he did not reverse route. No second ring present." She added that the man appeared calm and sober, offering clear details. In 1976, a pair of hikers submitted a report describing a loop that was not shown on any map. They believed they were ascending steadily, yet they passed the same fallen pine twice. The second time, they stopped to photograph it. The timestamp confirmed an hour and 40 minutes between the images. Ranger Harold Pike reviewed the trail afterward and determined that no natural loop existed in that area. His summary states, "Hikers encountered repeated terrain without directional change." Compass drift is often mentioned alongside repeating pathways. In 1983, a forester named June Callahan walked a survey route along Powell Mountain. She carried a compass and checked her bearing at regular intervals. Callahan later wrote that her compass needle shifted slightly west each time she passed a particular notch in the ridge. She completed her survey and realized she had passed the same notch 3 times, despite walking in a consistent line. Her notes read, "Landmarks duplicated, bearing unstable only in specific segment." A notable account from 1990 came from a wildlife researcher named Dr. Samuel Yates, who was tracking deer movements using flagged trees. Yates followed a flagged route for an entire morning. After lunch, he resumed and immediately noticed a tree bearing 2 flags of the same color, tied at the same height, knotted in the same style, something he said he never did. Yates checked the area for the original flagged path and could not find it. Ranger Sheila Moss accompanied him the next day and found only a single flagged section. She wrote, "Duplicate markers not present upon recheck." During a 1998 search effort, volunteers experienced a similar phenomenon. The team was searching for a lost hiker near Little Black Mountain when 2 members reported that they had passed the same stump 3 times within the span of an hour. They recognized it by a distinctive scorch mark. Their GPS units showed forward movement rather than circling. The GPS track later displayed a straight line, even though the volunteers insisted the terrain repeated around them. The search leader, Ranger Dana Wyatt, wrote, "Reported repetition, not supported by instruments. Subjective accounts, consistent." In 2005, an experienced backpacker named Eleanor Ward wrote on a feedback form, that she walked the same quiet stretch of trail, marked by a bent birch trunk 3 times, before realizing something was wrong. Ward kept a steady pace and maintained visual contact with her hiking partner, who saw nothing unusual. Ward said the air felt flattened and that the forest seemed to hold still during the repetition. The partner never saw the bent birch at all. Rangers inspected the route, but found no such tree. The repeating pathways are not always large segments. Sometimes the pattern manifests in small, precise repetitions. A 2011 entry by Ranger Marla Jensen describes a hiker who saw the same rock, shaped like a small wedge, appear beside him twice in a row at nearly identical intervals. The hiker was certain he had not doubled back. Jensen examined the trail and found only one such rock. Her notes simply state, "Single rock present, report accepted." Another detailed report came from environmental technician Mira Calhoun in 2017. Calhoun performed a solo assessment near the Tennessee border, documenting soil health across several plots. After completing her measurements, she walked toward her next location, but soon realized she was again passing the first plot despite moving in a straight line. Calhoun retraced her steps carefully and found no branch in the trail that could explain the return. She wrote in her personal file, "Observed unintentional re-entry into previous segment, trail continuous." Locals seldom speak directly about repeating paths. When they do, they rely on phrases passed through generations. A retired miner once told historian May Sutton, "The hills fold themselves now and then." Another resident remarked, "You walk straight, but the woods don't always hold straight." Their statements carry the same calm certainty found in decades of ranger notes. Explanations for repeating pathways vary. Some suggest misperception, subtle turns in the trail, or the influence of dense vegetation. But many of the documented cases involve clear visibility, marked routes, and hikers who know the land well. The patterns persist across seasons, generations, and weather conditions. Some rangers who record these events have no proposed cause. Others write simply that the trail doesn't behave the same every day. In the Appalachian Triangle, repeating pathways do not stand out as emergencies. They are treated as small shifts in the land, recognized quietly and recorded precisely. The trails continue forward, but the forest occasionally offers the same section twice, as if reminding hikers that direction is not always fixed. Rangers note the pattern, hikers move on, and the paths settle back into their ordinary shape once the moment passes. The distant signals. Communication across the Appalachian Triangle has long carried a pattern of interruptions that do not match the shape of the land. Rangers, volunteer teams, and hikers report short bursts of static, clipped transmissions, and brief windows of silence, where radios or GPS units behave as if placed behind an invisible barrier. These signals fade and return without following the usual rules of elevation, tree density, or weather. The interruptions are short, calm, and strange, only in how precisely they appear. Rangers document them the way they do unusual footprints or silent clearings quietly, with timestamps and location notes, never with speculation. One of the first written examples appears in a 1952 Ranger ledger from the Virginia side of the Triangle. Ranger Harold Mitchell noted that his handheld radio delivered a sudden burst of static while he walked a shallow ridge near High Knob. The static lasted 3 seconds, cutting off a routine check-in mid-sentence. Mitchell rewrote his message and received a clear reply. He tested the device again, standing in the same spot, but heard nothing unusual. He wrote, "Signal lost without terrain interference. The ridge is known for its open line of sight and usually carries strong reception." A similar account from 1967 came from a fire lookout stationed near Black Mountain. The lookout, identified only as GL in the shift log, reported a steady signal drop each afternoon between 2:10 and 2:18 p.m. for 2 weeks. The equipment was inspected and showed no faults. The lookout wrote, "Drop aligns with no shadow pattern, weather clear." After those 2 weeks, the signal returned to normal without explanation. Nothing changed in the station's maintenance or wiring. In 1979, a volunteer search team working near Little Stone Gap encountered repeated partial transmissions that sounded like echoes of their own voices. Team leader Helen Boyd recorded the event in detail. She wrote that their radio replies arrived with a half-second delay, identical in tone, but with the last word missing. The effect lasted for 5 exchanges before ceasing. Boyd noted that the team stood in open terrain, with no cliffs or rock formations, capable of reflecting sound. She ended her entry with, "Phenomenon did not recur on return route." A more unusual pattern emerged in 1988, when GPS technology first entered field use. Early handheld units were limited, but Ranger Ben Carver used one to remap parts of the Powell Mountain Trail. Carver documented that the device displayed his location on a ridge he had not yet reached, placing him nearly half a mile ahead of his actual position. He recalibrated the unit, but the device continued to shift his location eastward in steady increments before returning suddenly to his true coordinates. Carver wrote, "Device behavior not consistent with satellite drift. Pattern too narrow. Later attempts to replicate the anomaly failed." In 1994, 2 hikers reported hearing what they described as a distant beacon during a low-cloud morning near Cliffside Ridge. They heard 3 long tones, followed by a shorter one, similar to a navigation pulse. Their compasses behaved normally, and they saw no aircraft. When they informed Ranger Paul Whitlow, he checked aviation records and found no flights scheduled over that segment of the region. Whitlow visited the area that afternoon and heard nothing similar. His log states, "Report noted, no signal detected on return." Radio operators assisting with a 2001 missing person search recorded a pattern that is still referenced in training briefings. At 4:17 p.m., every team's radio received a sharp crack of static, followed by a whispered fragment that no one could interpret. Some heard a single syllable, others described it as a thin rush of air. All teams marked the same time. The logs read, "Broad interference. Duration is less than 1 sec." The missing hiker was found later that night, unrelated to the anomaly, but the signal event remains one of the clearest synchronized disruptions on record. Environmental technician Hannah Corbin encountered an unusual signal void in 2006. While testing soil data transmitters along the Kentucky border, she discovered that her equipment stopped sending readings entirely whenever placed within a narrow patch beside a stand of hemlock. She stepped 10 feet away and the signal returned. She repeated the test several times with identical results. Corbin wrote, "Localized null zone approx, 3 meters in diameter, no known geological cause." Another consistent type of report involves cell phones that behave as if receiving calls without ringing. In 2010, a hiker named Alfred Gray told rangers that his phone displayed a missed call time-stamped at 1:42 p.m. while he walked in an area without reception. He insisted it never rang or vibrated. When rangers checked the number, they found it belonged to a landline registered in another state and had not dialed out that day. Ranger Marla Jensen marked the occurrence as phantom signal reading. Many rangers have experienced brief communication failures in the same small sections of trail. In 2014, Ranger Fiona Crowell noted that every time she passed a particular bend on the Tennessee side, her radio emitted a soft clicking sound. She described it as mechanical, steady, not weather-related. The clicking stopped the moment she stepped beyond the bend. Other rangers later walked through the same spot and reported intermittent clicks, though the sound did not appear consistently. In 2018, 2 search volunteers hiking a ridge encountered a brief moment where their radios displayed full signal strength, yet refused to transmit. They attempted multiple channels, each resulted in silence. After walking 5 yards forward, the radios resumed normal function. One volunteer wrote on a supplemental form, "Felt like stepping through a curtain." Their logs confirmed their position as unchanged, suggesting no satellite obstruction. Environmental technician Mira Calhoun encountered her own anomaly in 2021 while testing new data loggers. Calhoun placed a sensor near Stone Ridge Cut and attempted a routine wireless handshake with her handheld device. The signal failed 3 times. When she moved a single step backward, the connection succeeded instantly. She repeated the test 6 times, receiving identical results. Calhoun wrote privately, "Boundary too defined to be random." Locals discuss these signal events with the same quiet tone used for lost hours and repeating pathways. A store owner in Harlan remarked, "The air in some places doesn't carry messages." A retired ranger said, "The radios don't like certain slopes. They go quiet, then come back clean." These statements mirror the structure of official logs: simple, steady, unembellished. Researchers have examined magnetic anomalies, atmospheric interference, and dense canopy effects. None fully match the precise way these disruptions appear and vanish. The triangle's terrain is not extreme enough to cause such concentrated failures, yet the reports continue. Every log concludes the same way. Signal noted, duration measured, location mapped. Nothing more, nothing less. The interruptions settle back into the long record of this region. A record that grows in small, measured entries, always factual, always calm. The shadowed figures. Sightings of distant figures along the ridgelines of the Appalachian Triangle have been recorded for generations. These reports do not describe running shapes or sudden movements. Instead, they speak of still silhouettes, forms that stand quietly at the edge of tree lines or appear briefly against a slope before fading into the forest. Rangers treat these sightings with the same calm precision found in every other log: time, weather, location, description, no emotion, no assumptions. The figures are recorded as they are seen, nothing more. One of the earliest written references dates to 1949, when Ranger Thomas Avery noted a person-sized outline standing at the far ridge above Cliffside Valley. Avery wrote that he raised his binoculars but found the slope empty. His report reads, shape present for 3 seconds, light, steady, no movement. He did not report further sightings that season, though he underlined the entry once, a habit he reserved for details he believed required later review. In 1962, a hunter named Marion Boyd described seeing a figure standing between 2 spruce trunks near Black Mountain. Boyd said the outline appeared dark and narrow, with no distinguishable clothing or features. When he looked away to call his dog, the figure was gone. Boyd told a ranger the next morning, "Looked like someone watching the trail." Ranger Lawson Creed walked the area and found no tracks, broken branches, or signs of a person. His note states, "Observation stands alone, no physical confirmation." A more detailed account came in 1971 from a group of hikers traveling near High Knob. They reported seeing a silhouette standing at the top of a distant ridge. The figure appeared stationary, facing downslope. One hiker raised a camera and took a photo. When the film was developed, the ridge appeared empty. Ranger Evelyn Morris interviewed the group. She wrote, "All subjects consistent in description. Photo reveals no figure." Morris marked the ridge on her map with a small circle labelled Visual Anomaly. In 1980, a forestry intern named Daniel Price described an encounter that remains one of the most referenced in ranger briefings. Price said he was conducting tree health surveys when he noticed a dark figure standing motionless on a nearby rise. He estimated the distance at 200 feet. He walked toward it, calling out in case someone needed assistance. The figure did not move. When Price bent to step over a fallen branch, he looked up and saw only open air and a stand of young pines. In his journal, he wrote, "Line of sight clear, figure absent." His supervisor attached the note to the seasonal report without comment. Sightings increased briefly in the mid-1990 seconds. In 1994, 2 volunteers mapping erosion near Little Black Mountain reported a tall silhouette standing beside a leaning oak. They both saw it at the same moment. One described it as a thin, upright shape, while the other used the phrase, "a person with no detail." The figure remained still for several seconds before slipping behind the oak. The volunteers walked to the tree and found no one. Ranger Sheila Moss visited the site later that week and wrote, "Visibility high, no evidence of recent presence." Children have sometimes reported these figures as well. In 1999, a family hiking near the Tennessee border said their young daughter pointed to a ridge and remarked, "Someone's standing up there." The parents looked but saw nothing. The girl insisted she had seen a tall person with no face. Ranger Dana Wyatt interviewed the family. Her note states, "Child calm, no distress." Description remains simple. Wyatt walked the ridge and found no unusual ground disturbance. In 2005, a trail runner named Benjamin Carter recorded a sighting that caught attention for its timing. Carter said he saw a figure standing near a narrow bend at dusk. The silhouette did not step aside or react to his approach. When Carter reached the bend, the space was empty. His watch indicated he covered the distance to the bend in under 20 seconds, too short a time for the figure to vanish into the dense growth. Carter left a short written statement at a ranger station. Shape present, then absent. No sound. Rangers themselves occasionally report these figures. In 2011, Ranger Fiona Crowell noted seeing a dark silhouette against the fading light while checking trail conditions. Crowell estimated that the figure stood still for at least 10 seconds. She wrote, "Looked like a person observing the slope. When she raised her flashlight, the outline dissolved into the surrounding trees." Crowell marked the location with a small X and added no further interpretation. Environmental technician Mira Calhoun recorded a brief visual anomaly in 2016. She was measuring soil moisture near Powell Mountain when she noticed what she described as a vertical shape out of place with the tree line. Calhoun looked away to adjust her meter, then back again. The shape was gone. She noted it quietly. Possible figure, unverified. A ranger entry from 2018 describes a figure seen twice within the same hour. Ranger Marcus Hale was patrolling near Stone Ridge Cut when he saw a dark shape standing at the crest of a slope. The figure remained motionless and then vanished behind the ridge. 20 minutes later, Hale saw what he believed was the same shape farther south along the trail. He reached neither location in time to investigate. His log reads, "Consistent silhouette. Distance prevents confirmation." Locals mention these figures in the same soft tone they use for every other anomaly. A store clerk in Harlan once told a visitor, "You'll see someone up there sometimes. They're not doing anything. They just stand for a while." Another resident commented, "Some shapes belong to the hills. They don't walk like we do." Most sightings share three details. The figures appear still, they vanish quickly, and they leave no physical trace. No clear clothing is described. No footprints are found. No broken branches suggest a sudden retreat. The figures appear at distances that prevent precise identification, yet close enough that the observers remain certain they saw something. Researchers have suggested misperception, lighting effects, and the natural contrast of tree trunks against ridge light. Yet these explanations do not fully account for the consistent descriptions across decades, or the brief moments when multiple people see the same figure at once. Rangers document the sightings without adjusting their procedures. They treat them as observations, not warnings. The figures appear, stand quietly, and disappear into the land that holds them. The logs remain factual, each one capturing the same simple pattern: a shape at the ridge, still and silent, here and then gone. The place where the maps stop. Every record kept within the Appalachian Triangle. Every quiet report of shifting ridgelines, missing hours, silent clearings, abandoned camps, and figures that do not walk the same way people do, leads toward a single idea spoken softly by those who have lived beside these hills for generations. They say the land holds its own shape, separate from the maps that mark it. They do not offer warnings in loud tones. They explain that the triangle behaves in ways that are steady, quiet, and deeply consistent. The forest is not hostile. It is not restless. It simply follows patterns older than the trails laid across it. Rangers who work in this region come to understand the same thing, though none write it directly. Their logs describe events that do not connect neatly to each other, but share a calm, repeating logic. A ranger will note a path that returns upon itself without bending. Another will document a block of missing time. A third will record footprints that step forward and stop in open soil. None of these entries suggest conclusions. Each stands alone, as if the land prefers to show one detail at a time. One of the clearest examples appears in a 1978 end-of-season summary by Ranger Evelyn Morris. Morris spent decades walking the ridges and trail lines. Her final note of that season reads only, "The land here does not remain where it is put." She did not expand the thought. The sentence appears between remarks about overgrown brush and recommendations for improved signage. Her tone never changes. Another long-serving ranger, Marcus Hale, once told a new volunteer that the triangle should be walked with loose expectations. Hale did not describe danger or uncertainty. He meant simply that the experience of distance, direction, and time does not match printed maps or digital coordinates. Hale's field notes reflect this idea. Many of them contain sketches drawn from memory curves of trail, small clearings, or the outline of a slope, followed by the quiet comment, "Shape not same on return." He wrote it dozens of times across decades. One of the most striking accounts comes from a volunteer searcher named Helen Boyd, who joined operations between the 1972 and the early 2000s. Boyd kept a personal notebook in which she wrote short entries describing the land. One entry, dated the 14th of June 1996, reads, There are places where the forest feels thin, like a sheet with light behind it. Boyd never identified those places on a map. When asked by colleagues, she said only, "You know them when you're in them." Locals have their own phrases for this. In interviews collected over the years, many say the triangle moves quiet. A resident from Harlan once explained that hikers do not disappear because the forest hides them. Instead, the path opens in a different place than where you left it. Another resident near the Tennessee border said, "People walk straight, but the land doesn't stay straight." None of these statements carry fear. They appear as simple observations, the kind made after decades of working, hunting, or farming beside the same ridges. When researchers ask for clarification, residents often shrug. They do not call the triangle supernatural or mysterious. They describe it the way they describe weather patterns or seasonal growth, steady, familiar, and shaped by its own rules. There is a place often mentioned in these interviews, though rarely with coordinates. Locals call it the place where the maps stop. They do not mean a physical border. They mean a section of land where printed maps feel less useful, not because trails are poorly marked, but because expectation loses its weight. People who walk there speak of reaching junctions that do not exist on paper, or arriving at ridges sooner than they should. Some describe the sense that the forest is larger on the inside than on the outside, though none present this as a dramatic claim. They state it plainly, as if describing the length of a familiar road. A retired forester named Alan Rudd explained it best in a 1984 interview. "The hills don't change," he said. "Your place in them changes." His meaning was unclear to the interviewer, yet his tone suggested certainty formed over decades. Rudd would not specify the exact areas he meant. He simply said, "You'll know it when your compass argues with your feet." In 2012, Ranger Fiona Crowell submitted an end-of-year reflection describing her experience with new digital mapping tools. Crowell wrote that the devices worked well except in sections where the land feels unsettled. She clarified that unsettled did not mean dangerous. She used the word to describe areas where GPS readings wavered, distances shrank, or direction felt slightly misaligned with the visible path. Crowell closed the reflection with the line, "It is not incorrect, only different." Search teams speak of similar moments during operations. Many recall walking in unison, calling out names, and hearing their voices return in softened echoes that do not match the landscape. These echoes do not distort or alarm. They simply return gently, as if the forest is listening rather than repeating. Volunteers often describe the sensation of walking into still pockets where time feels stretched. When they exit these pockets, the forest resumes its ordinary rhythm. None of these patterns are categorized as threats. The logs do not treat them as hazards to navigation. They are noted, measured, and set down with the same neutral tone that defines every ranger report in the triangle. And though individual entries rarely reference one another, there is a quiet thread linking them all. The land behaves consistently within its own design. The Appalachian Triangle does not reveal itself through events or single moments. It reveals itself through repetition, the steady return of similar observations by people separated by decades. A ranger in 1953 and a technician in 2018 write nearly identical notes about silence in certain hollows. A hiker in 1969 and a trail runner in 2005 describe footprints that appear, then end cleanly. A search volunteer in 1977 and a family in 2013 recount missing hours that pass unnoticed until timepieces insist otherwise. If the region holds any unifying truth, it rests in this steady accumulation of quiet details. Maps end where the land's own patterns begin. Trails follow predictable lines until they do not. Voices return altered. Figures stand where no one is found. Distances change by small degrees. And through all of it, the people who know these ridges best continue to offer the same simple guidance, spoken without urgency, unchanged through generations. Walk with others. Stay on marked paths. If the forest grows too still, move on. And if something calls your name, keep walking. They do not present these as warnings. They offer them as part of understanding a landscape that keeps its own counsel silent, patient, and unbothered by the maps drawn across it. You've now seen the Appalachian Triangle through the eyes of rangers, locals, and hikers who quietly documented what they witnessed, small events, calm observations, and details that repeat across decades without explanation. Nothing here shouts for attention. The land does not try to frighten or warn. It simply behaves in ways that do not follow the rules printed on maps. If you want to explore more places where the ordinary becomes uncertain, where history, nature, and time do not always agree, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment about which chapter stood out to you, and share this video with someone who enjoys quiet mysteries. Your support helps us continue creating long-form documentaries that unfold at their own pace, just like the stories in these mountains.